Hey, Trails Collective world, Ian here with the weekly, what was the rundown, but Trails Collective live for this week. I was off last week for Thanksgiving, and then coming up, we'll probably take a couple weeks off here ahead of maybe doing the Trails Collective New Year's Eve special or end of year episode. This round, as things are cooling down on the race front, we won't be quite as deep on the number of events. We're just going to stay focused on JFK. I'm stoked to have Garret and Sarah both on with us tonight. And Sarah, thanks for hopping on the back end there as well. And I'll be stoked rather to chat with them. They both had phenomenal runs at JFK, and we will dig into that here in just a second. If you are joining us live, thank you for being on. You can drop comments or questions. You should be able to into the Trails Collective's YouTube feed, which I'll pick up. And thanks for dropping any questions or comments for Garret or Sarah in there. I think you might be able to put it through on the Trails Collective's Facebook live feed as well. It seems like one of those often doesn't come through, and I'm not really sure which. But in any case, thanks for trying in there, and I'll try to pick it up and patch you through. And for those who are catching it after the fact, feel free to drop a question or comment on there as well. Sometimes I'll get those notifications, or maybe Garret or Sarah will as well if you've got any questions, and maybe they can follow up if you have something. So thanks for being on here. For those who are just joining us potentially for the first time, thanks so much. It has been my intent with the Trails Collective to really bring together the various amazing entities which comprises just a really spectacular trail community, from RDs to volunteers to entrants to run shop owners to trail creators to whatever, coaches. I just think it's such an amazing community, and it was really the intent to try to bring all of us together. As I've mentioned in prior episodes, I feel like, especially even more so now in an increasingly divisive climate communities, for me, the trail running world and friends have always been a pathway that really brings us together, that a lot of our differences really kind of fall by the wayside, that we really share the time out there together, kind of the trials of miles, and that really becomes meaningful in terms of relationship and community building. So I have been grateful for this community and doing what I can to highlight individuals and entities and efforts that maybe wouldn't get some of the spotlight otherwise. Hopefully Garret and Sarah have gotten quite a bit of spotlight, hopefully, following their JFK efforts, if not some before. But if I can magnify their voices a bit as well, that is an intent. So thank you. All right, so just a couple things off. I mean, there's not that much to talk about tonight in terms of what's shaking in the community. In terms of the ultra sign up hot list, Jigger Johnson 100K is 92% full. It's running August 19th out of Waterville Valley, New Hampshire. Really burly course. I forget what the metric is. It's something like, I don't know, 36,000 or something like that feet of elevation gain for the 100-mile. It's rare to be able to get the course that they're laying out. I think, if I remember right, it might be a point-to-point through the White Mountains. So I'm pretty excited to see how that one kicks off. But the 100K is 92% full. Two of Run Bum Blanton's are on the hot list. I feel like some of that gets toggled sometimes on the field size. A little bit more will be allowed in later. But in any case, at the moment, the Grayson Highlands Half Marathon 50K 50-miler running May 6th in Mouth of Wilson, Virginia. Is 98% full. That's one that I have in one of the Trails Collective's feature articles on some of the most scenic races in the Northeast. I think that's one of the ones I have for the top 3 in Virginia. Quest for the Crest 10K, 50K running May 20th in Burnsville, North Carolina is 97% full. So if you're interested in either of those, now would be the time to get on them. Coming up, it's still fairly quiet. Devil Dog Ultras in Triangle, Virginia is coming up this weekend. Hybrid Challenge and Freight Train in Farmville, Virginia. And I think Hellgate is coming up maybe next weekend as well. So that's kind of what's shaken. Not a whole lot on the FKT scene, as some of our Beast Coast trails get covered over in some snow and ice here and there. But I will stay tuned there. I'm starting to see some of the 2023 lines from our companies in footwear. I don't know. I don't know about some of the lineup changes. I don't know if I'm seeing anything too crazy. But nothing too new in the store at the moment. It should come in this week. We should get the Speed Goat GTX Spike version. It's just a speed goat with a Gore-Tex upper and carbide tips on the outsole. So that should be rolling in to take some Beast Coast terrain coming up. So reach out if you are interested in a set of those. But I am going to weave in here Garret and Sarah. Good to see you.
Hello.
Hello. So, all right. So for those who are, well, I'll intro, I guess, JFK briefly here and then introduce you to Sarah and Garret. JFK 50 mile, for those not in the know, America's oldest ultra marathon, and the tagline there, and legitimately speaking, 60th running this year. Point-to-point course, about 60 miles northwest of DC. Uses the Appalachian Trail from miles 2.5 to 15.5, moves to the Canal Towpath from 15.5 to 41.8, and rolling roads from 41.8 through to 50. So got to have some trail chops for the Beast Coast technical terrain, but also some road gears to hammer the sustained non-tech miles to come. So definitely a versatile race, and which I think makes it pretty cool. Historically has had some of the top ultra runners in the country and world. Maybe some of the years, not necessarily a really deep field for both genders, but there's almost always at least a couple fast people at least up front. So it can be guaranteed at least some fast runnings in competition. So to take you into who we have on with us this evening. So Sarah Biehl, 28 years old, out of Columbus, Ohio. Hammered out a new course record, finishing 11th overall in 6:05:42, 6 minutes under, or roughly, Ellie Greenwood's mark from 2012. RD Mike Spindler quoted it as possibly the greatest accomplishment in JFK history. She's had a solid 2022, including being in contention with a DNF to learn from at Bandera, 5th at Canyons. She ran a 2:39 at the Columbus Marathon in October for the women's win, and a 5.5-minute PR for her. Garret Corcoran coming in from Salt Lake City, 26 years old. California roots, right? Is that where you're from?
Correct.
Yeah. But with a little bit of Beast Coast street cred in time spent living in Baltimore into the pandemic. Time where he found his running passion after feeling a little bit burned out, I think, at the tail end of the collegiate running career. With PRs of 3:59 for the mile. Did you do that when you were 19? Was that early on?
Yeah, that was 2016.
Yeah, dude, wasting no time there in terms of age there. For the mile, 13:54 for the 5K. He's not slow. He's had a solid year, including an 8th at Canyon, 6th at Speed Goat. And this may be a more defining, I think, taking of the stage with this one. Taking the overall JFK win with the fifth fastest time in race history with a 5:29:47. So Sarah and Garret, thank you so much for being on here and just taking a few minutes out of your evening tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Totally.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So hopefully it can just be an open discussion. I'll try to weave in anybody who drops any comments or questions into the field. Sam Kirk may join us later in the episode. He was excited to potentially be on here and just geek out a little bit in some of the field, but had a conflict, but he may drop some questions in later. But I'll just put out some maybe guiding questions, but it's always good to, if there's any tangents that you guys kind of feel in the moment, Garret and Sarah, of things that would just be fun to talk about on the race, or things that you remember, or a point of carnage or whatever, feel totally free to take a tangent that may seem related or not related at all. Or if you want to bounce things off of one another, totally feel free to take those threads as well. So, all right, and I'll shut up here in a second and let you guys do some talking. So let's see some of the precursors. I'm going to start with you, Sarah. So Columbus, one of your best races of all time, I think you said. You felt like you ran a really, I think, and calculated race. So a PR for you, at the same time, 2 minutes off of the trials qualifying time. So no doubt you felt great, and it pointed toward excellent fitness, but it's some part of you, I imagine, was hoping for that standard.
Yeah. Going into it, kind of shifted gears last minute and talked with my coach on the phone a few days before and kind of decided that, qualifying for the trials this time around would be a pretty big PR. So kind of having that goal of breaking 240 and then kind of seeing what that feels like and then going from there. So my coach kind of predicted what I would run and almost to the exact time.
Oh, really? Was that? Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it. Oh, right.
Yeah.
And he's, and you guys have been together for a while, right? I mean, I can't remember. Was he coaching you at Shawnee State as well?
No,
Okay.
we were both alumni. My dog might join a little
Yeah,
bit.
all good.
Sorry.
Yep.
No, we were both alumni from Shawnee, but our years didn't match up. I think when I was a senior in high school, he was a senior in college.
Okay.
But it was actually during the pandemic that we started working together. But we've known of each other and just being alumni of the same school for a while.
Got it. And so for that big jump, I mean, you did get close, and that's awesome. That was to the prediction, but it must have given you hopefully a pretty good boost of confidence, just knowing you were kind of in peak shape and in pretty, I feel like, ideal time frame. You had enough time to recover, kind of recharge, and then kind of go strong again into JFK.
Yeah, it was it was kind of the perfect timeline for a good tune-up race, so to speak, before JFK. And as for confidence, I mean, I think having the Columbus Marathon go that well was one of the key factors into JFK going so well. I mean, I had so much confidence, and I was just super hyped after the race. That's when I called Michael, my coach, and just riding that high after the race. And I was like, I want to break the record at JFK. And like, that's when we like started setting that goal. Right. As soon as I got in my car after the race.
Uh-huh. And so you're somebody that's very effectively, I think, straddling that line of between trail and road at the moment. And JFK, I think, is a perfect opportunity to blend those two. I mean, do you kind of in your head, or are you feeling a pull in one direction or the other in terms of where your enjoyment is, or you don't necessarily think like that and you're just, both are good and just kind of taking them as they come?
I'm honestly enjoying doing both. I think that both complement each other. And I also think that I think that's exactly what I needed, was to kind of have both. I feel like when I was focusing just on the road, I was just so pace oriented and just, I mean, still having fun with it, but just so dialed in on one specific side of the sport, when I feel like there's just so much more out there to explore. So I don't want to give up one or the other. I just think that both, having that road speed and strength kind of correlates into the trails and vice versa. So I just like both and kind of having fun with it.
Cool. And Garret, for you, you are also kind of finding your own footing here too, right? I mean, you kind of hopefully, it sounded like, refound your passion after not being sure really where you're going to go after college with it. Started jumping in a bit more again in 2021. Ran up front, I think, with Adam at Speed Goat in 2021, and then it got a little bit ugly in the upper miles.
Yeah, I only ran with him for a few miles in that race. I remember he showed up to Speed Goat. We were both in the parking lot 30 minutes before the race, and he like walked over and like saw me and said, like, "Oh, I thought I was gonna have an easy time winning this race." Like, kind of sucks that you're here, because we'd raced each other in college and had pretty close finishes, a decent amount, but I hadn't been training at all. I just got talked into it by some friends out here and was running maybe 40 miles a week, didn't have any long runs leading into it, and it showed on race day.
And you learned from that though as well, right? I mean, then you came back this year, you had that experience under your belt, maybe a little bit more focused. And that's kind of how it went with the sixth place finish and a pretty solid field and lineup as well.
Yeah, definitely went better than it had gone the year before. I still left the race feeling a little bit disappointed. I was happy I was able to still hold together a pretty decent finish, but I was dealing with a lot of nutrition issues. I think in the last 10 miles, I was cramping a lot and I had to stand there and wait for the cramps to go away, eat some salt, and eventually get moving again. But a few minutes later, they'd come back up. So there were a couple of points in that race where I was standing there in the middle of a hill, just like cussing, not able to move, and a lot of pain, and like hoping no one's going to come up on me and like hear me, because I'd be pretty embarrassed. But as it turned out, I had about 10 minutes on the next guy by the time I finished. So I don't think that was really ever a danger, but it was definitely a step in the right direction, and gave me some confidence and some more lessons to learn moving forward.
Well, at least you were still standing, which is a testament maybe then to your toughness. I mean, I think in some of those times when I've been in that position, I think I found myself on the ground and kind of that isotonic kind of leg cramping motion, and being half in pain but half laughing because it's just kind of ridiculous at that point. I think I remember Tyler Siegel, one of the years I think he won Cayuga Trails, one of my events. I think he was also in one of the final ascents, was also on the ground, just totally kind of spastic cramping as well, and finding it relatively humorous. So good for you to still be standing and not be on the ground. So well done. And I did, and I probably did, I started, as I mentioned right before we hopped on, geeking out a little bit as well. And I was curious, just because you do come in with some of those, I mean, you come in with, I mean, you're fast, right? And it's been interesting in the past, I don't know, however long it's been, maybe the past 10, 15 years at this point, where we're seeing some of the you guys and women come out of college, probably more men so far than women, but coming out with some really fast cross country or track times. And as opposed to just going to roads, seeing some of you just venture into the trail circuit. And it's exciting to kind of see what you can all do. And it'll be exciting to see some of the women cross over more as well. But I was geeking out a little bit. I mean, you with the fifth fastest time, I was looking at Hayden, Adams, Walmsley's, and Stevens' PRs from the mile to the 5K to the 10K to the marathon, where I could find, and just almost like running like the Daniels table, and like seeing ideally like on a VDOT table, how you all, how I'd compare you all. And I was looking at Adam's time as well, and you've got him both on the mile and 5K, but clearly he's doing pretty well up into the 100-mile distance. So it's kind of, I don't know, fun to see how people line out. But I guess that's getting into the weeds a little bit. So you mentioned nutrition. So let's just go there, right? I mean, so for you, Sarah, that was for sure a learning moment for you in Bandera. I think as
Yes.
Bandera was going down, it might have been Rachel and I having an active text thread, seeing how it was all shaking out up front. And we had Riley's, I think, parents were there, maybe crewing. So I was hearing who was coming through aid stations, and I knew you were in contention and like running well, but then also heard that it got ugly, and then you had come back in, and really nutrition was kind of related there. So since Garret, you just mentioned nutrition as well, I mean, and as you're both getting into it, and maybe as it applies to others who will just get into it more as well, can you talk about for each of you some of the things where maybe you had some work to do in nutrition where it didn't go well, and kind of what you've learned or kind of takeaways, or as you're dialing things in for yourselves?
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. For Bandera, I mean, it really went south when I went 2 hours without taking literally any nutrition at all, which was silly looking back at it. But at the time, I was just kind of gambling, I think. And then just comparing last year's JFK to this year's JFK, I almost don't even know how. I think I, in a way, got a little lucky in last year's JFK, because this year, getting off the trail, just in the first few hours of the race, I'd already taken more nutrition than I had in the entire race from the previous year. So just honestly changing up nutrition, and as bummed as I was for Bandera to go south very quickly, it was the best thing that could have happened, because I finally actually took that a little more seriously and looked into it and started fueling, just practicing with it. I think that was the biggest thing is, I wasn't doing that necessarily as much on like training runs. I mean, I was maybe taking a little bit, but not really training the gut, as they say. So doing that, and then just really making that more of a priority than anything else. And actually carrying that over to JFK this year, just it makes such a difference.
And so for you, you're using spring gels and then long haul in the bottle. Is that kind of your go-to?
Yep.
And what's so going into, for instance, this year at JFK, in terms of what works for you? I mean, did you have a caloric target, and what were you taking in terms of both of those, or trying to get in and then did get in?
So I definitely didn't take as much fluids as I wanted. I wanted to get kind of at every cruise station, switch out and have my bottles like complete, because I had a nutrition belt and I wanted to change that out every single time. And I just wasn't drinking as much, mainly because I had to go to the bathroom. So I got kind of carried over a little bit, which I got a little worried. But I think for a race kind of quicker, I didn't want to take as many spring as maybe I would in a slower 50 miler. But I was trying to get a spring in every hour and 10, 15. So towards the end, it was getting a little bit, especially on the canal, I wasn't taking it necessarily as much every 45 minutes to every hour, or every hour to every hour and 15. Just because I know at Columbus, I did take a couple spring at Columbus, and I got a little lucky because I made it right as soon as I finished. And then I kind of had a episode of vomiting at the finish line. So I didn't want to have that carry over to JFK. So I wanted to be a little careful on taking too much at the same time.
Yep. And I guess it's still short enough in terms of you getting in. It's a good thing you ran as fast as you did, in under 6 hours, where it's not like your stomach will turn on that stuff that early. I mean, maybe that changes once you get up into some longer races, 100K, 100 mile, where your gut just checks out of wanting that stuff. But I guess you can get in under that window pretty well.
Yeah, it worked out perfect at JFK. But
yeah. And how about for you, Garret? I mean, and I guess Speed Goat is an example of one that's happening summertime. So temps can be up there. You're also up in altitude, which influences what your body is processing as well. I mean, I guess you're used to being up higher, living in Salt Lake, but what's been some of that you've worked out or that you're still working out at the moment?
Yeah. I sweat more than most people, so I lose a lot of salt, and I really have to make sure I stay on top of that when it's hot. So, the races that I've run this year prior to JFK, it was all pretty hot days, and I ended up cramping in every single one of them. And it's just a matter of staying on top of it. And I'm not thinking about it enough during the race most of the time until something's going wrong. So when I saw it was going to be a little colder for JFK, I was pretty ecstatic, because I wouldn't have to worry quite as much about that portion of it. I'm also finding I feel like I burn more calories. The engine runs a little hotter than most people that I race against, because I'll talk about nutrition with most of the guys that I run with out here, and we'll go on long runs and they'll be taking a third or half the amount of calories as me, but generally feeling better by the end of a longer run. So I got to make sure I have a lot of calories in my bottles and stuff like that, just so I can keep up. So at JFK, I started out with some Martin gel or Martin drink mix in my handheld bottle, and I had somebody toss me another one coming out at Weaverton, and I had another packet of that stuff sitting in my belt that I had intended to use, but felt too lazy to, or just kind of forgot about it by the time I got to mile 38:41, which was where I had intended to put it in there. And I was eating a lot of Spring Energy. I think I had 5 speed nuts in my belt, and I was just eating those. But again, not thinking about it a whole lot in terms of trying to do it on the hour and stuff like that. But just whenever it feels right, which maybe isn't the right approach, and maybe why I've had some nutrition issues, and I should probably think about that a little bit more as I'm moving forward. But I feel like as I start making those nutrition plans and stuff like that, the race becomes a little bit more real and becomes something I can be nervous about. Whereas the way I approach ultra running is it's just a long run where you make some new friends and you have a lot of fun for a couple hours, then you start separating and start hurting. And, that's when the nutrition, like staying up on the nutrition while you're in that early part of the race, really comes in handy. But I've found it tough to stay on top of, just, pay attention to it and think about it personally. But luckily I don't really have any issues with vomiting. I feel like I've got a pretty strong stomach. I don't think I've ever puked, from running or eating stuff during the race. During JFK, I was like grabbing pretzels and random gels from tables, just to supplement what I had. And stomach felt great the whole time that day, which was pretty good.
Well, maybe you can spend more time just running with Sarah and just wait for her to puke. And then maybe that's just going to kind of make you puke. And then you can just kind of get that off your chest. So like, I'm good now. Like I've been there, it's all right. And we're good. But that is hard. I mean, if your engine is running hot and you're then, say for the average person, the target would be 300 calories per hour, and suddenly you're having to look toward like 400 or whatever it might be. I mean, that takes a lot of attention, especially when you're racing as hard as both of you are to try to get that down. So with your time of, what was it again? What was your time, Garrett?
Mine, 5:29.
5:29. There it is. So 5:29. So, Sarah, do you think it's possible with your time of, so him at 5:29? I mean, you ran a phenomenal time, but do you think you could have got closer to 5:29 if you would have had the mustache and chops that Garrett has? Like, do you think you could have got under 5:40 maybe?
Most definitely. Yeah.
Do you think that Michael Owens can give you something in terms of supplement that could help you grow chops like that? Because I think that would come in really handy.
Yeah, I don't legally probably not, but
Maybe not.
We could just like paste something on. I think might have the same effect.
That's possible. Yeah, that's good. I know that I was pretty excited when I saw the images of Garrett and kind of sporting those chops, but I didn't know whether others were equally as excited and whether we could equate it to performance.
That's funny. I definitely saw some comments online. People were saying I looked unprofessional and sponsors wouldn't like that, which I kind of laughed about because I don't have any sponsors. That's the great thing about not having sponsors. You can present yourself however you want.
And so, all right. So how about there though? All right. So, I mean, you're just getting, and it's interesting to see where they were in their career. Some of these individuals who ran some of the historical really fast times at JFK. So for the women, for you, Sarah, I mean, Ellie, so looking back to her in 2012, she ran her marathon PR of 2:42 in May of 2012 at age 33. So she came in hot into that year. Her peak years 2011 and 2017. So it was right in there at the start, and then went on to be one of the greatest women's ultra runners of all time. You said you were inspired by her saying you have to run your own race, and you did. And Garrett, this is something that you touched on as well, and you just kind of referenced it again in a second. And I'm going to go there also, so don't let me forget in terms of running your own race. Sarah, how does it feel for you? I mean, I know it's not always healthy to necessarily compare yourself to others, but when you're setting a course record and looking towards it and just kind of knowing where you fall in such a historic race, I mean, there's got to be a piece of your brain at least saying, hey, like this is where she was early in her career, and to give you some boost of like confidence to know you're right up there, know how an amazing runner that she was. And if you two connected since or post race?
No, haven't connected. But just, I mean, it does give me a lot of confidence, just knowing how incredible her whole career has been. I feel like it is hard to compare just because, just being different runners, different eras, and just different, and entering the sport at different times. But just the confidence and just kind of the excitement, leading into 2023, and just setting goals and just kind of, I don't know. For me, it's just nice to have that boost of confidence, and that helps me in future races too.
Yep. And for you, A shout out to, right, I think it's Columbus Running Company and Ohio Valley Runners.
Ohio
Is that
Valley
Ohio
Running
Valley
Company.
Running Company? There it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And they've supported you all through, right? I mean, kind of like
Mhm.
the hometown shop and
In Athens, yeah, which is about an hour and like 15 from Columbus.
okay.
Mhm.
And if you had, I mean, I guess you're getting there. And have you had any in this past like couple weeks since like the JFK run? Any others reach out to you? Do you feel like this is more of a defining stage for other companies to start reaching out, or kind of see how this next week goes, or this
Just
next year goes rather?
I mean, just kind of throwing some ideas around and chatting with a few people, but nothing like really set in stone. And that would be a big goal of mine going into 2023. But also just being the end of the year, it does get a little tricky.
Yep. And for you, Garrett, just the preference on sponsors. It's also fun to look back on where those who ran faster than you, JFK, were on their careers, and some as they went on to, well, let's see. So looking back at who ran faster and where they were. So Walmsley really found his trail groove around that 2016 mark at age 26. At the time that he ran the course record, Hayden was already a powerhouse on the scene by then at age 29, 4 years of phenomenal results under his belt. Adam really found the trail ultra fire during the pandemic and having a crushing year at 2021 at age 26. So knowing you're just kind of in that cadre and that you have the wheels, you have the set to perform, I mean, all of them went on to find pretty awesome contracts. I mean, that they have definitely earned. I mean, is that something? I mean, I guess you just take it as it comes, but is that on your radar? So, and that's kind of a thought of where you commented on, it doesn't matter on the chops because I don't have sponsors and kind of be who you are. But I mean, you're both now in that realm of running with people who went on to get pretty huge contracts. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know how they look at necessarily JFK. It's still, it has history there, but it's still an East Coast race, and it's not necessarily like I don't know, West Coast 100-mile or UTMB or whatever. But I don't know. Have any of them kind of reached out, or is that kind of create an opening there, or not necessarily so far?
I haven't heard from anybody yet. I feel like the scene to me seems to be more about who you know, and I haven't gone and tried to make any of those connections. I also I don't really know exactly what I would want out of a sponsor. I don't really want running to be the one thing that kind of consumes my life and my identity. I've kind of enjoyed working a desk job. Like I don't like the job that much, but it's nice to go in and just be a normal guy. I try not to talk about my running too much at work. I mentioned to my coworkers that I was running a 50-mile race when I went on vacation a couple weeks ago, but didn't really let on how well I had done when I came back. And one of them decided to go look the race up and saw that I had won and put me on blast on this big email, which was kind of funny. It was nice to get some love there, but I kind of like having that other side of my life to kind of duck back into. I guess I would be wary with quitting a job like that and trying to go and pursue running full time, just because I don't think I'd get nearly as much money from running as I do making six figures in a desk job. So that's also like a big consideration. I still have enough time outside to get all my training in, and I haven't really felt like I've made that many sacrifices. It's been a lot of learning how to find that balance this year, and I think I've finally found it pretty well in terms of being social and also getting in my training in my work, and taking running seriously, but also making sure that I take time to do the other things I enjoy. So I'd be a little cautious stepping into that sponsorship scene, just because I feel like it would start to consume a little bit more of my time and my commitments. But at the same time, if somebody was to come to me with a good deal, I'd probably sell out pretty fast.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, I guess until an offer's out there, it sounds like you're in a pretty awesome space, and in terms of weighing just what that would mean. And especially if you're coming from the point where you were a little cooked by running and now you're finally enjoying it, and to be able to really approach it on your own terms. And so for both of you, in terms of how that race went, as I referenced, Sarah, I think one of the takeaway quotes from Ellie and what Michael sent over, the article, or her takeaway from JFK was run your own race. And then for Garret, where your watch conked out early in the race, you ended up just kind of running on feel and your own races as well. And is that how it both felt out there for both of you? Do you feel like you were just really kind of doing your own thing?
Yeah, that was just kind of the goal. Is the Michael sent me an article that I think Ellie, I think it was after the race when she broke that record, and I think someone on along the way had said, play your own game, and we just kind of played off of that a little bit. Just kind of, at the end of the day, each section I had to take it the way that to like my strengths, and just to kind of tackle it, how I felt comfortable with it. And I felt pretty good about that throughout the race, that I was just doing my own thing and kind of going off of how I felt with it.
And for you, Garret?
I feel like I've kind of learned a lot this year that trail racing it shouldn't feel like a race for most of the time you're out there. I guess my first race this year at Canyons, I had 5 or 6 friends with me on the start line, and we all spent a good amount of the first 15 miles together, and a few of us broke off, and I was with one of my good friends until about mile 32, 33 that day. Just moving up the pack, having a lot of fun, cracking jokes, singing songs, and doing whatever. And we felt really good. And it was only when he dropped off from my pace when I started feeling bad. So I've kind of taken that lesson into the other races I've run this year. And, when the gun went off at JFK, I'd already made sure to get to know some people around me on the start line. And I started right next to Mackay Clemens, who ended up finishing second. And he and I both finished, I finished second, he finished third at a race in Mammoth Lakes 8 weeks prior. And, it was reassuring, just like having somebody I knew next to me, be able to talk. And I don't know, if you ask any of the guys that were in the top 15 at the beginning of JFK, they were probably pretty annoyed with some dude with mutton chops who was, kind of like screaming or like making jokes, asking people if they were running the Club Cross Country Nationals in San Francisco. That's in 9 days. I actually did find one guy who's going to be running, so we'll be connecting out there, which is could be fun. But just tried to run with people and run exactly how I felt like I should be running in terms of feel and ease of pace and all that. And we hopped on the trail, and I was a little concerned with that because I've got some bad ankles, and I knew the rocks were going to be buried under leaves. So just tried to make sure I had a wide berth between me and the next person in front of me. And eventually we started splitting up as people started bombing down hills. Found myself in 5th in no man's land for a little while, but as my watch wasn't really working, I was just sitting there kind of hoping I was running about as fast as I had intended to. And it was really validating to come off the trail in 149, which in my mind, I had like the ideal race. I'd come off in 148 or 149 and then start hammering the towpath and hopefully be in contention for the course record by the time I got to the road at the end, the last 8 miles. And everything was going pretty well. I had moved into 3rd by the time we got on the towpath, and Matt Daniels and Matt Seidel were right in front of me. I could see him within a minute of me. And I had actually yelled up to Matt Seidel because he was maybe only 20 seconds ahead of me. And I was asking if his watch was working and if he wanted to let me run with him, just so I knew what kind of pace we were running. And I don't think he understood what I said and just kept going. And he was like painstakingly close for about 13, 14 miles. And I didn't really want to be grinding out there by myself. So when we came around a corner, you could kind of see back to the people behind you. And Preston, I don't know if you say his last name Cates or Catez, but he ended up getting 3rd. And Josh Park were running together, maybe 20 seconds behind me. So I stopped at a porta potty at the next aid station, let them catch up. I was kind of looking through the slits as I was peeing in there, and they were pretty close by the time I was done. And I popped out like right in front of them, tried to spook them a little bit, and then started running with them. And it was really nice to have some conversation going for 7 or 8 miles. And right after the aid station at mile 27, for whatever reason, the conversation steered towards an ex-girlfriend of mine. And I got really emotional and just started floating away from him. It's like, emotionally charged. I started increasing the pace and didn't see them again the rest of the race, and caught up to Matt a couple miles later and got in front of him pretty quickly. And from that point on, I wasn't looking at my watch, just trying to, feel out, try not to run too hard on the towpath. So I had something left on the road. But by the time I got to that road, I was hanging on by a thread, and probably didn't have enough nutrition in me. And I think I averaged like 7 minutes per mile on that last 8.2. And Mackay and Preston were making up a lot of time on me, but luckily I had a big gap. I had no idea it was that big until about 2 miles left. So,
and it was good, right? I mean, he did put, what was it? He increased like 9 minutes and like in the final stretch on you or something to that effect. Did I read that somewhere where he was charging hard, but you just had too much of a gap opened up?
Yeah. I came off the trail, or I came off the towpath 9 minutes ahead of him and Preston. And I think the first couple of miles on the road, I was probably running about the same pace as they were on the road, but my pace was slowing more and more. And by the time I hit the finish line, I'm not sure I could have run another step. I just kind of went and collapsed in the grass and was hardly able to get up when we had to go do the award ceremony later.
So if I'm going to be your pit crew in the future, then then you're knowing what's the kind of the secret sauce motivator for both of you. So Garret, if I'm going to be on your headset as your pit crew, we're going to start getting into relationships, and we're going to be talking about prior ones, and that's going to fire you up. Sarah, how about you? What do you want to hear through the headset from your pit crew that gets you fired up?
Oh my gosh. It depends on the day, really. I don't know if anything, it's like really firing me up, just kind of intrinsically motivated, like just kind of, I don't know, reminding me of my goals, I guess.
And so for you running your own race and those goals, as an example, I mean, your progression at JFK has been, it's pretty phenomenal. I mean, you started solid first one with a 5th place finish in 722 in 2020, second in 2021 and 622. I mean, to have picked up an hour year over year, I mean, that's a huge progression. So what was your takeaway last year in terms of, wow, I did this really well, but then you were also left with, all right, but this is what I can improve upon, and this is what I'm going to try to do for 2022?
Definitely nutrition, and just having a whole extra year under me of ultra running, and honestly, that trail section, just getting more comfortable on the trails, and getting out and visiting Rachel, which helped so much. Just getting comfortable on the AT made a huge difference. And, just getting stronger. I think year by year, I mean, ever since college, I feel like I've been fortunate and lucky enough to have a steady progression and not really have a major hiccup with injury or just really kind of falling out of love with it, really. So I've had that steady progression, and each year I've learned something new. I've gotten a little bit stronger, and the same thing happened throughout my college career. So just kind of playing off of that, and playing it safe at the same time. I mean, I've never ran 100-mile week yet, and I'm almost 29. So just having that steady progression, and just the same with JFK, from each year that I've done it, is just having a little bit more knowledge and wisdom under me.
You're still getting in some decent miles, all right? Or you're somewhere between 70 to 90, I think, in terms of training volume.
Yeah, I've gotten close to 100, but not hit it yet.
Yep. And I guess you just, right, I mean, you want that to happen with intention, right? As opposed to just going after the number or whatever. Yeah, and this build up to Michael was one of the key things for this. It was
I mean, almost every week I took a day off, and that seemed to help quite a bit with recovery. I work a somewhat of a weird schedule, Tuesday through Saturday for the most part. So almost every Tuesday, which was my Monday, I would just take that day off, and it was nice to kind of catch up on sleep and just get ready for a new week, and just have that day. So that was pretty key on this build. It seemed to work quite well.
But even in that build, I mean, you're still really capable. I mean, there's a lot of historically some of the better, even 100-mile women's ultra runners weren't able to really tolerate 90 miles a week, whether either the body wouldn't take it or that just wasn't for them. I mean, so your body's able to take it. I mean, that's a solid volume that you're able to absorb and handle.
I think too, it kind of depends on terrain as well. I feel like it is easier for me to get even a little bit more living in Columbus and only having maybe a day or two that I am unfortunately getting more vert. So it is easier, compared to if I was doing quite a bit more vert, then that'd be, almost equal or same time on my feet. Just the miles don't add up, which I think that the more on the trail, it's harder to compare, mileage weeks rather than like time on feet or vert or things like that. So it is definitely easier for me to get more mileage being where I am.
Yeah, that's fair. And how about for you, Garret? I mean, where do you feel fit? I mean, I don't know what the coming out of high school or into UC Berkeley, historically, were they higher volume programs, or where do you find that you just feel fit and feeling confident in terms of like volume?
Yeah, I guess starting back at high school, it was pretty low volume. My coach was very intentional about making sure that none of his athletes got burnt out when we were in high school. I'd pop over 50 miles a week every once in a while my senior year, but it was a progression. I wasn't even counting miles until that year, and then it was just counting in my head. And in college, I felt like I was going up about 10 miles a week per year. 60 to 70 my freshman year, and then moving up to 70 to 80 to 90. I was doing a couple of 100-mile weeks my fifth year, but that was right about my limit. I would usually end up getting hurt soon after those weeks. And that's, partially a function of intensity too, because I've been able to run over 100 miles a week, multiple times since then and not be hurt afterwards. And I don't run as hard as I did then, at least on my easy days. So, I don't know, as far as where I feel fit, I don't know, if you look at my training, I put everything on Strava. Like, I'm anything but consistent. 4 weeks out from JFK, I ran 48 miles. Then the next week I ran 116 miles. And that was partially due to that week that I ran 48 miles. I was starting to feel an injury come on. And I was a little worried I might have had like a stress reaction in my tibia. So I just took a few days off and hoped if I ignored it for a couple of days, I'd come back to running, it'd be fine. And it was, and I felt really good. And that was a really good reset for me. I felt really fit after taking those 3 days off. I was able to put down a nice another couple weeks of training before starting to taper off for JFK. But I guess where I feel fit, if I'm running, over 10 hours a week, time on feet, that's like usually a good sweet spot for me, like 10 to 15 hours. If I start getting over 15 hours on feet, I'm getting a little run down and can't sustain that. But yeah, if I'm doing a lot more hiking on the trails and stuff like that, I can handle more time on feet, even if I'm not going quite as far. Whereas like if I'm running on the roads, 100 miles a week felt like a pretty good sweet spot leading to JFK, at least for, a 6-week training block. But I wouldn't want to do that very long term because I'd have complications, and almost did leading into it. So
yeah. And Sarah, you had, I think you mentioned in one of the interviews, one of the key workouts going in was pretty race specific. A couple hours on the trail, then move to time on either rail trail or roads after. Was that pretty indicative of a JFK focus? And for you and Garret both, did you guys have key workouts such as that you felt like worked really well for JFK, or anything you do in hindsight?
Yeah, so that race, it's one of Michael's go-tos for JFK. He's done it before leading up to his JFK races, and it's like perfect. Just especially in Athens, it's so easy to get almost exactly like how the race would lay out. You can pop on the trails, and then I mean maybe like a mile to the bike path, and then get rolling on the bike path. Do I think I did a couple different workouts like that leading up to it. And one was an hour steady state, and the other one was 20-minute steady state on the bike path after just regular easy run on the trails. And it was just good to, get that comfortable, like changing shoes, kind of use my car as an aid station, and then just easy down to the bike path and try to get right into the workout, and then kind of cool down the rest of the time. And it kind of it helps with confidence too, having a workout coming right off of the trail, and if it goes well, it's great confidence boost leading into JFK for sure.
Yep.
My turn.
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I had one particular workout that really felt like a great indicator. I guess I just started switching my training up about 8 weeks out after I'd run at the Mammoth Trail Fest and started getting on the roads more and taking out the vert, because I was probably running 20,000 feet of vert almost every week for most of the summer. And part of that was, due to being intentional about it. And part of it was just, I wanted to go run up on top of a lot of peaks. But knowing I was coming into JFK, wanted to get more marathon fit. And that's kind of what I had been talking about with the guys who ended up being my main training partners for the JFK build. For most of the summer, I told them, like, all right, let me do these mountain races, and then I'll go run marathon training with you. And these guys are getting ready for CIM coming up this weekend. So I was to start hopping in marathon workouts with those guys. And for their long runs, they'd usually be going like 20. So I'd just go run and, get like an hour easy before starting running with them, and then start hammering. But I think one that was like a big confidence booster for me was, or like 1 week, I was 2 weeks out from JFK by the time I got to the end of this week. I had gotten dropped by one of these guys in a marathon workout before work on Wednesday. Felt pretty good about my own workout, but not like I was in 2:18 marathon shape like I perceived this guy to be. But we went and did a long run that weekend, which his run was basically 22 miles, running 6 flat per mile the whole time, except you run 5 flat for every third mile, starting at mile 8. So we ended up having 5 miles where we were running, faster than I had run for pretty much the whole build. And I started pulling ahead of him and the other guys after the third rep, and ended up running 24 miles that day, averaging like 5:48, but I'd run like 7:10 or 7 flat on the first couple miles of it. And after that, when I was like, maybe I really can average right around 6 minutes or under for that towpath section. Like, I'm definitely going to be running into some unknown and getting past mile 40, just running that hard for that long. But I know for a fact that I can, like, if I can do this up at altitude, down at sea level, like, this kind of pace is going to feel super easy, and I can definitely make it through the towpath. And on the day of, it was really easy to find that pace once I dropped onto the towpath. I was even going a little faster than I intended to, just because I wasn't quite sure how fast I was going until somebody told me I'd been running 5:45s for 6 miles when I was on mile 6 of the towpath. But I felt like it was good to switch the training up for me personally, and like feel fast and go back to kind of where I got fast in the first place. It was a lot of fun. Definitely spice things up a little bit for me.
And Sarah, you referenced as in the training, just in passing on the shoe changes. I think Garret, you wrote out the Tecton X's maybe from start to finish, and
Correct.
Sarah, you went the route of doing the shoe change between the AT and then the rest of the race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what'd you start with?
The Hoka Torrens, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I went to the Nike Vaporflies, which I had ran the marathon in, and felt pretty comfortable. But I think JFK was my last race in those.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't last very long, but they're great. They just don't last very long.
Yeah. And let's see. So you guys, anything else before I get into kind of where we're headed here, I guess? Anything else that would be like kind of fun takeaways from like JFK, or things that you could connect with each other, since you're both out there experiencing the same event, that would be fun to chat on? And in a minute, no pressure here, but is there anything that would be fun to chat on that maybe we haven't covered so far?
I just have a question for Garrett. So when I guess you said something about like your coworkers, you told them that you're running 50. What is the reaction that you get from that? Because it's very interesting, like going into work and kind of having the two different worlds of, like people that outside of work that you run with, that this is like a normal thing. And then you go to work and you say you're in 50 and people kind of look at you a little crazy. So I don't know what people say to you.
Yeah. I actually switched jobs about 6 months ago, and when I told my coworkers at my prior workplace that I was running canyons and I was going to go run a 100K, first I had to ask how far 100K was, and I told them it was 62 miles or 61 miles, and they were, aghast that anybody would run that far. They're like, I can get in my car and drive that far.
Yep, that's the reaction is, oh, I don't even drive that far.
Yeah. But yeah, my new place of work, most of the director level people are like, they brag about having done Ironmans. So when they found out I was running an ultra, they're like, oh, you're on track to, be a director in a few years. And I had to kind of remind them that like, I don't want to ever take that desk job that seriously, but
yeah,
I appreciate that they think I'm going places.
Interesting.
And in return, anything, Garrett, from your end, that anything that's come up that maybe we could touch on further, or anything that would be fun to talk about on like JFK?
I don't know. I guess the couple hours after the race for me, I was really loopy. Had a lot of conversations with people that I hardly remember having. Like it was almost like I was drunk, but I hadn't had anything to drink. So I remember seeing pictures of me and Sarah like being on the podium, and I hardly remembered even like getting up there. Did you kind of have the same experience?
Yeah. It was a hard lunch after, and even that night, I had one beer at dinner, and it was like a little pub, and I look over at the TV and I'm like, that's weird that there's dog races on the TV, and like, no, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, never mind, that's golf. Oh my gosh, golf is on TV. Where did I see a dog? I don't know. So yeah, I needed to go home after that. That was pretty bad.
That's a solid depleted value right there, and metric.
I don't know or I need glasses or something. I don't know.
So what do you guys have? So Sarah, I think you said maybe JFK, you'll at least take a year off. That's not going to be in the cards for 2023. You're doubling down on the golden ticket route, right? I think you have Black Canyon on the calendar for February, canyons in April. I don't know, the stage is pretty well set. You never know how they're going to go until they go, but hopefully you feel pretty good and pretty stoked about those next two opportunities.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've heard great things about Black Canyon, so I'm excited to get out there and just, go for it again.
Yep. In terms of just that, I guess, progression in ultra, I mean, the 100-mile distance still gets so much of the focus. I've friends who run what's considered the shorter distances, and they just don't really get love in terms of the larger media space versus something like Western, something like the 100-milers. Do you kind of feel, for both of you, a natural kind of pull in that direction? Like this is just where kind of the trail game heads is longer and into hundreds, or for you both, or do you think that that's just kind of an intrinsic, like, and Garrett, I haven't asked where you're headed here yet, but knowing that Sarah's heading in that direction. Well, let's go there first. Garrett, what do you see? What's on deck for like 2023, or where do you feel like are you going to have a go at canyons again, or what are you targeting for the next year?
Yeah, that's actually funny. You were kind of implying that most people just like to move up in distance in the trails. I don't know, with the long recovery time after these ultras, like I was looking at dropping back down in distance next year. I was kind of waiting to see when U.S. Mountain Ultra Trail would release how to qualify for Team USA for the World Champs in Austria, and they just released it a week ago. So I've got the Sunapee Scramble. I'm actually not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but
Yeah, you got it.
That's on my radar. I haven't signed up for it yet. And then Breakneck Point, the marathon, and after that, just a lot of several sub-ultra races. Probably going to go out to Broken Arrow and run the 23K, and then the Cirque Series out here in Utah. There's 3 of those in Utah, and then another one in Colorado, Wyoming, Alaska. I might go up to Alaska for one of them. It'll be fun just to be able to race every other week and bounce back quickly. And yeah, I guess not have every race be such a big calendar event because there's always another one around the corner.
And it is that they're getting some love, right? And you have more, I think, high profile, and not necessarily, I guess, qualifying them because they're high profile in terms of media, but high profile in terms of they'll still draw some like competitive fields like up front, and that's still, you know, fun, or it'll take you to some pretty amazing places. And it's cool that you have or that everybody has something like the Golden Trail Series or something like the Cirque Series, where they are some shorter distance events that still get pretty fast front ends and pretty competitive fields. It's nice to have those options out there. I don't know if that was always the case, so it's cool to see those there. And so for you, Sarah, and just thinking of both of you, so some of the stuff that you're looking at now, Garret, and I don't know whether Tom Hooper is on with us here in the moment or not, in the States, that it won't just be covered by snow, ice, slush, whatever. And so that's a hard press for him, even in New Hampshire with Sunapee, finding a mountain that's, I think it's like south facing or whatever, in the hopes that you'll be able to have a viable and not just nuts course in terms of conditions. But you are maybe going down a distance, but that's also some technical courses. I mean, Breakneck are also, we've got some really technical pitches there. Is that something that just hopefully fits with you just really enjoying the trail space and just enjoy like doing it and racing? I imagine that kind of sounds fun to get into some of that.
Yeah, it does sound fun. It definitely doesn't align with my skill set as much. Definitely, I get dropped on downhills by most of the guys that I run with out here, just because I'm a little tentative in terms of like, you know, really letting go when things get rocky. But yeah, it sounds fun, and yeah, I'd like to, you know, give myself the best shot at making, you know, a team USA, and that's where the races are. So
yeah,
you know, run the ones that are announced, right?
Yep. And for you, Sarah, you were a little bit out of your, I think, experience set or whatever with Broken Arrow and some of the technicality out there. Was that fun for you, or were you like, wow, it's kind of fun, but like this is not my skill set at the moment?
Definitely not my skill set, but I think there's something fun about mixing it up and not always doing something that's like right in your skill set. I just feel like that there's so much out there with like the different distances, different terrains, different types of races or different places, that it's always nice to like mix it up. And, you know, it was definitely one of the harder races I've ever done. But there was a lot of takeaways from that race. So it was just nice to get the experience. And then the before and after too, just meeting a lot of people and just kind of seeing what that race is all about. That was super fun for me. And also just knowing kind of just myself, like where I can like dig myself out of, and that I can still finish even if I'm feeling very, very bad or just completely out of my comfort zone. So that was kind of fun to discover that part of myself.
Yep. Right on. Well, being as talented as you both are, in addition to the volume and effort you're continuing to lay down, paired with your young age, I mean, it's going to be exciting to see where you both go with at least another 10 years in your prime age window. If the fire stays there, it'll just be fun to see your evolution, just where you can go. So Congratulations to both of you on phenomenal JFK runs. And it'll be, again, really excited to see what 2023 brings for both of your paths. So thanks again for carving out some time with me here this evening. For all those who tuned in live, thank you so much. Again, feel free to drop some comments in if you want later. This will be available as a audio podcast where you find podcasts. Thanks to Ellie Pell, who is now based in Boulder, for continuing to translate these into audio broadcasts as well. But again, congrats, and thanks so much to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Totally.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I will follow up with you both more as we go. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
See you. All right. So thanks again to all those who tuned in live. I appreciate it. Thanks to all support the Trails Collective in tuning in and sharing the posts and spreading it in your own communities, offering us suggestions, things on events coming up, things that we could cover. I appreciate it. So as mentioned in the beginning, I'll probably take a couple weeks off here. It was a lot of media this year, and it'll be good to take a few weeks downtime. Stay tuned for maybe details. Hopefully we'll do another New Year's Eve live special. That's been fun the past couple of years. And hopefully we can bring you some fun guests and some just fun segments on that. So thank you all again. I will be off to catch my kids before bed here. And until till then, I will catch you in a couple weeks. And thanks for the support. All right. See ya.